See that a round of applause is rippling across the webinar. So Urmila, thank you very much for your input. That was very, very helpful. So what I'd like to do now then is to move on to the second part of the webinar, which is just to put Urmila's presentation into context as well. So what I'm going to do is change these slides, and just to come back to where we were before. Okay, you should see some slides loading on your screen in a second. Okay, yeah, wonderful. So part of this CPD framework, what we want to do is just to put Urmila's input into context. So what I'm going to do is change these slides. This is rippling across the webinar. So Urmila, thank you very much for your input. That was very, very helpful. So what I'd like to do now then is to move on to the second part of the webinar, which is just to put Urmila's presentation into context as well. So what I'm going to do is change these slides, and just to come back to where we were before. Okay, you should see some slides loading on your screen in a second. Okay, yeah, wonderful. So part of this CPD framework, what we want to do is just to put Urmila's input into context. So we've got a three-stage approach within this framework. The first is we've been very grateful to have Urmila's expertise to explain some of what's going on at Stanmore and how they look at leadership and governance and what they're doing, the developments that they're doing. What we're then going to do is take you through the example of the resources that we've had a highly experienced researcher do some work for us. And we want to share those resources, so instead of people having to trawl through mountains of materials online, we've done that work for you. And we're going to dip into those in a second to show you the resources that are available to support this CPD module. What we then wish to do is to support organisations and individuals apply some of this back to their own organisation. And what we've put together are some examples of some activities that we are recommending that you have a look at, and you're able to pick and choose the parts of those activities that you feel will most support you and your organisation. So it's not homework, it's nothing that has to be submitted, but there's some tools that we've put together to support you take this information and start to explore this with your own organisation. What we do ask is that you share your experience and any outcomes that you have from doing so. So if you take up that offer and say, yeah, there's some resources there I want to have a look at that are going to be useful, and I'm going to have a go at some of these activities because I think that's where we are as an organisation, brilliant. What we'd ask you to do is to share that, and I'm going to take you through those steps as well before we close the webinar. So let's move on to those resources that we were talking about, and to do this I'm going to share my screen now then. Let's have a go and do this. Here we go. Wonderful. Hopefully you're going to see my screen very shortly. And I'm just going to take us back to where we are. Okay. Oh, let me just bring this back up. So we're just going to load the Learning Futures site. And as that loads on your screen, should just take a couple of seconds to bring up our home page. So this is the site that you'll be familiar with. This is where you can access what the program's doing, find out the projects that are being commissioned on behalf of the ETF to explore all of these topics, including governance and leadership. So I'm going to move the mouse over to the CPD area, and if I click on here, then you'll see that we've been working on this fairly recently, and you'll be able to scroll through the list of the CPD modules that are there, but we're here to concentrate on the leadership and governance. So if I click on the leadership and governance module, a little bit of information with regards to the webinar, but it's the resources that we want to have a look at, and we've split these into two categories. So we've separated governance from leadership and management, and if you move your mouse, you'll see on the screen onto the governance aspect. Then I'm just going to click on there, and the resources are going to show up on the right hand side of the screen. So as I say, we've had somebody who's been working brilliantly at bringing together all of the really key bits of information that we feel we can help you from the online research that's taken place. So what you'll find within here, we've tended to refer to them as buckets, where we're able to put things that are of interest. But as I start to scroll here, you'll see there's some work there, Horizon Scan for the UK government from the Foresight Horizon Scanning Centre. So that's the first one that's showing on there, and if I click on there, then that will take me directly to the link that will come up. So it's just loading. Your screen may have gone grey for a couple of seconds whilst that loads, but you can say that that takes you directly into the report. What we will do is, when we look at the activity, the CPD activity, you'll see where we've been specific about which of these resources we feel are going to help you the most. So if you've got limited time and say, I need to know what the sort of resources that punch above the weight, the ones that are really going to help us as we move forward, then we've done that through the CPD activity. But let's just take you back to where we were. Okay. So back into our research again, just scrolling through here, so you're familiar with the FELTAG recommendations and the reports. You can see there's the 7 stages innovation toolkit from Nesta. Very useful resources in there to have a quick look at. And then we've got some models and some examples of strategies that organisations have. So the University of Liverpool have their strategy. The University of Nottingham have put together a strategic toolkit to help organisations develop that governance aspect of looking at learning technologies. And there's some resources there to support within the procurement of ICT equipment and services. Some further research about the effects that this has on education. And you'll see down in the bottom right hand corner here, the diagram with the circles. There's a report that's very useful in helping to look at what these responsibilities are, and when we look at governance, about those issues of the vision of the organisation, the alignment of the organisation to that vision, and then the assurance of how well things are going. So there's some really practical resources online that are available for you. So second step of this CPD module is to click onto the link. We've just had a quick look there at the governance. I'm just going to go back and click on the leadership as well. So you can see there are 3 leadership resource links that you can click on. If I click on Horizon Scanning, again, that will just jump us into the research that's been done to help you look at specifically Horizon Scanning. So looking at what's on the horizon and what impact might that have. Lots of research. You might be familiar with the NMC Horizon report, and if I click on there, then that will jump us directly to it, and there's some really good information here. It will just take a few seconds to load depending on the size of the file. But again, some wonderful research that's taken place here, some very useful models to help as we look at the topic of governance. So just coming back to that module. Step 1 is the webinar. That's being recorded. That information will be made available, and the link's available for yourself either to come back to the webinar or any of your colleagues. Step 2, the resources are there. They're categorized to help you so you don't have to do so much scanning yourself. So they're categorized into governance, leadership and management, and leadership and management again has been split into Horizon Scanning, some strategic resources and reports that are available online, and also then some organisational, so looking at digital leadership, learning technology staff and organisation structure. Please feel free to use those. That's all available free of charge. Again, if you find something in there that's useful, we'd really welcome you to share that, your experience of that, and to blog that on our site, which I'll show you in a second. But also, if you think there's some resources that are missing from there, it's obviously an ever-changing world, then by all means make a note of that as well as you do your blog online. I'm going to move us into the third stage now, and that third stage is the CPD activity. So this is specifically aimed at helping you take this information, building on Urmila's input within the webinar, the resources that have been put together, and to say, okay, let's look at how you might apply that in your organisation. And there's two activities that have been developed, governance and leadership. So I'll click on governance to start with. Again, just take a couple of seconds to load. You can download this file, it doesn't have to be shown on screen, so you can save this locally to your computer, and again you can distribute that to any colleagues and they're welcome to use this. But what we've done is put a series of activities together where we've made some suggestions of which parts of those research buckets might you want to start to have a look at. So for example, if you're looking at doing something about setting the scene in terms of governance, you might be saying, okay, what we want to do is make sure our governors are aware of where we are. Then we've put some suggestions in there of how you might go about that and the resources that you might look at. The numbers that you see in the right hand side for each of those is a suggestion of typically the sort of time that it might take to do that activity. So it's just a rough indicator, but if you're looking for some quick wins, you might go for those that are slightly smaller. But ideally what you're doing is using this resource and picking out to say, okay, a little bit more on horizon scanning here. So activity B looks to the Foresight horizon scanning report, but it also has some links to the EdTech self-assessment tool, and you'll see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen then one of the Learning Futures projects, Gateshead Council, their NetsPass project. They've also shared some information about a digital literacy skills survey. So you'll see there's lots of really useful resources, very focused, that if you say, yep, I need to put something together here, I need some help of how we're going to do that, there's some suggestions, some starters for 10. Please don't feel you need to go through every bullet point, and please don't feel that you need to do every activity, but we'd ask you to have a look at those and recommend that you have a look at those and pick out those areas that you feel are going to be most helpful to you. So that was the governance one. Let's just go back and I'll quickly show you the leadership. Very similar, but you'll see has its own links to different parts of the leadership research that's been undertaken. So the NMC, if I can say it, Horizon Report, that's showing there, and some of the models in there. The Future of Learning, Preparing for Change, there's an EU research report that's presented there. And again, just as we scroll through, so here's an example, activity C, looking at making predictions. So you can listen to a quick podcast, about 4 minutes, from Nesta, and they're looking at what they think the predictions are for 2015. And our recommendation is you might have a go at doing that yourselves as well for your organisation and start to share that with your governors and leaders and managers. You'll see activity D. Again, this has come from one of the Learning Futures programs, so projects I should say. Blackburn College has kindly shared some slides where one of their staff has put together a summary for governors, and they use this in one of their governors meetings to help raise an understanding of what learning and innovation or learning technologies is about, where their college is, and what the challenges that they face. So again, by all means, these are resources available to you. Use them as you will, and what we'd ask you to do is to share your experience and any outcomes. So to do that, I'm just going to take you back onto the site, and you'll see here on the home page, if you scroll down the home page, you'll see a number of blogs will show on the screen. So either the research blogs from the projects, or some of the posts will show down on the right hand side of the screen as well. When you register on the site, once you're signed up, top right hand corner, you can then sign in, and when you click on my profile, what you'll be able to do, this is asking me just to sign in. Hopefully my password isn't showing, so I'm just going to sign in. There we go. And what you'll be able to see is that you're able to enter a blog as well. So if you use any of the resources, if you have comments or questions with regards to Urmila's input within the webinar, and if you use any of the CPD activities or any part of them, what we'd ask you to do is just to share your experience. So if it's been something that's been useful, how's it been useful, what have you done with it? If there's something that you've taken it and done something totally different with, wonderful, please do just share your responses on there. and it's all part of that community of practice that we're developing as part of the program as well. So I'm just now going to finish off the webinar by taking you back